Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on explainable AI.
XAI.
XAI, exactly. And we're really getting into this fascinating question. Can AI systems, um, can they actually teach us something new? And what are some of the potential downsides to that?
Yeah. It's a really cool area. And this paper, it gets into some pretty surprising findings,
Okay,
actually.
so lay it on us. What are we looking at here? What's the source material?
All right, so the paper we'll be diving into is from Informs.
Uh,
That's the Institute for Operations Research and the Management Sciences.
gotcha.
And the paper is called Explainin' the Impact of Explainable Artificial Intelligence on Users' Information Processing.
Catchy. And this paper really focuses on two specific studies. Is that right?
Yeah, two very different situations, actually.
Right. Oh,
In the first study, they had people play this investment game where they had to decide whether to loan money just based on some personality traits of a borrower.
hmm. So kind of like a simplified Shark Tank where you're like
Yeah.
the only shark?
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting,
Yeah.
they gave some participants an AI to help them out.
Okay.
So some of them had an AI that just gave a prediction, like loan or no loan, kind of like a mysterious black box.
Right.
But others had an XAI,
Okay.
which gave the same prediction, but then also explained like why it made that call.
Oh,
So it might say something like, this person's really high on competitiveness, which generally means they're less likely to repay a loan or something.
interesting. So it's like you get to peek behind the curtain,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and see the AI's reasoning.
exactly.
So I'm curious, did that extra insight change how people played the game?
Totally. Yeah, it totally did. But
Right.
here's the really interesting part. Those explanations actually changed how people were evaluating the borrowers,
Okay.
but not always in a good way.
Wait, so more information could be a bad thing.
That's what they found.
How?
Well, the researchers found this thing called confirmation bias popping up.
Huh?
So, for example, people at first thought that a borrower's agreeableness was like really important for knowing whether they would repay the loan.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes sense, right?
To nice people pay their debts. As it seems logical.
Right, exactly. But the XAI actually showed that other traits like competitiveness and patience were actually much stronger indicators.
Oh, interesting. So did people adjust their thinking after the AI told them that?
Well, partially, they definitely started factoring in competitiveness and patience more in their decisions, even when they were making decisions later on without the AI's help.
Oh,
So they learned something.
yeah.
But here's the thing. They kind of clung to their initial belief about agreeableness,
Mm.
even though the XAI, showed that it wasn't really a factor.
So they embraced the new information about competitiveness,
Right.
but they wouldn't budge on the agreeableness thing.
Right.
It's like they cherry-picked what they wanted to believe
Yeah,
based on, what they already thought.
exactly. It's classic confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And you know what? That actually made their investment decisions worse overall.
Really?
Yeah, because they missed opportunities to invest in like really reliable but competitive borrowers
Wow. Wow.
simply because their bias about agreeableness was reinforced by the XAI.
That is a head-scratcher. So explaining the AI's logic
Yeah.
in some cases might lead to, less accurate decisions
Yeah,
if it's feeding into those existing biases.
that's what this is suggesting.
That's wild. Okay.
And it raises some questions about how we design and use these systems.
Right. Okay, so that was study one,
Yeah.
the investment game.
Mm-hmm.
Now the second study.
Yes. This one takes this idea of AI explanations and applies it to the world of real estate.
Okay, so is this like AI picking out the perfect fixer-upper or something?
Not quite.
Right.
So in this study, they had real estate experts
Cool.
estimate the prices of apartments.
Okay.
And some of them had no AI help. Some had an opaque AI that just gave a price.
Yeah.
And others had an XAI that explained how it got to that price. It broke it down,
Okay.
showed how locations, size, amenities all contributed.
So they were using XAI to give those experts a deeper understanding of the pricing process.
Exactly.
Did they use some fancy method to explain the calculations?
They did. They used this method called SHAP. It stands for Shapley Additive Explanations.
Okay.
But basically, think of it like getting an itemized receipt
Right.
that shows you how each feature factored into the final price estimate.
Okay, I get you. SHAP helps you understand the why behind the price. I'm curious, though. Did those seasoned real estate pros, did they actually learn anything new from the AI?
Even the experts, yeah, they changed their minds about which features mattered most.
Hmm. So AI can teach an old dog new tricks,
Yeah.
even in real estate, where, it's all about experience.
Yeah.
But I'm remembering that stubborn confirmation bias, the first study.
Yeah.
Did that pop up here too?
Absolutely. Yeah, they specifically measured how strongly people held on to their initial beliefs.
Okay.
And it turns out the more confident an expert was in their initial assessment,
Uh,
the less likely they were to change their mind, even when the AI was saying something different.
so the more you think you know,
Yeah,
the less open you are to new information.
seems that way.
Wow. Even if it's from, something like AI, that should be objective.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Anything else? Anything else interesting in this study?
Yeah, there's another wrinkle. This study found spillover effects.
Okay.
So after using the XAI, the experts started evaluating apartments in a totally different market,
Mm-hmm.
using the same criteria, even though those patterns didn't really apply there.
Hold on. So they were misapplying what they learned from the AI
Yeah.
in a totally different context.
Yep.
That seems dangerous.
It is.
It's like learning to drive in a quiet neighborhood
Yeah,
and then assuming those same rules apply on a busy highway.
exactly. So learning from AI in one situation can influence our judgment in other areas and not always for the better.
Okay, things are getting really interesting.
Yeah.
So we've seen how XAI can influence both everyday people and, seasoned experts.
Right.
Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But before we get into like the so what of all this, I think it's time for a quick break.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more in just a moment. All right, so before the break, we were talking about those two studies from that Informs paper. Yes. We saw how explainable AI can change the way people approach investing, even for those of us who aren't exactly, Wall Street wizards.
Right. And it's not just everyday decisions either.
Right.
It can even sway the opinions of experts
Yeah.
in fields like real estate, where experience is usually king.
Yeah, totally. But the big takeaway for me was this whole concept of confirmation bias.
Yeah.
This tendency we have to like savor information that supports what we already believe,
Exactly.
even when those beliefs might be, a little off.
Exactly. And in both studies, people really clung to some of their initial assumptions,
Right.
even when the AI was presenting evidence to the contrary.
It's like that saying you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
Or in this case, you can show someone an XAI explanation,
Yeah.
but you can't, force them to accept it if it clashes with their worldview.
Oh, right.
Which makes me wonder, like, what does this all mean for how we design and actually use these AI systems in the real world?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it suggests that we can't just assume that explanations are going to solve all our problems.
Okay.
Like slapping an explanation on an AI, it's not a,
All right.
quick fix for that black box
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
In fact, it might even create some new challenges.
Okay, what kind of challenges are we talking about?
Well, so imagine you're using an AI to help you screen job applicants,
Okay. Yeah.
and it seems like a good idea to use XAI
Mm.
to explain why the AI is recommending certain candidates,
Right, to like make sure things are fair and transparent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if those explanations are actually unintentionally reinforcing existing biases
Hmm.
in the people doing the hiring?
Okay.
So let's say, for example, the AI highlights a candidate's volunteer work as a good thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Seems harmless.
Yeah, totally. Volunteer work shows good character initiative.
Right.
Who wouldn't want that?
What if the hiring manager already has, like, a subconscious preference for candidates who do certain kinds of volunteer work?
Okay.
Maybe things that align with their own values or
Right.
interests.
I see what you mean.
And then seeing that highlighted by the AI just strengthens that bias,
Yeah.
even if it's completely unrelated to, job performance.
So instead of challenging those biases, the explanation could actually amplify them.
Exactly.
Wow, okay. So this potential for bias amplification, that's something we really need to be careful about as AI becomes more, part of our everyday lives.
It really.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? Like, do we just ditch XAI altogether? Because it seems like
Yeah, I don't think so.
kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean, I still think explainability is really important
Okay.
for building trust and accountability with these systems, but
Yeah.
we have to be a lot more thoughtful
Hmm.
and strategic about how we implement it.
Okay. So how do we do that? How do we walk that tightrope between, providing transparency,
Hmm.
but avoiding these unintended negative consequences.
I think one important step is to move beyond just like
Okay.
simply providing those explanations
Mm.
and actually try to foster more of a culture of critical thinking
Okay.
around AI.
So encourage people to actually question the AI,
Yeah,
challenge its assumptions. Be
exactly.
mindful of their own biases when they're, looking at the information.
Exactly.
It's almost like we need to train humans to be better AI partners. Like equip them with the skills to actually, critically evaluate what the AI is telling them.
Exactly. We put so much work into developing, these fancy algorithms,
Right.
but we also need to invest in educating people on how to work effectively with AI.
Right.
It's about creating that partnership
Yeah.
where humans and AI can actually learn from each other.
And I like that. It's like AI human teamwork to make the dream work.
Exactly.
But practically speaking, what does this training look like? Are we talking like AI 101 for everyone?
Well, it could be things like workshops
Okay.
on, basic AI concepts and
Mhm.
limitations, or even incorporating like critical thinking exercises into AI assisted tasks.
Okay.
But the key is to give people the tools
Right.
and the knowledge to use AI responsibly,
Yeah.
rather than just blindly following its recommendations.
Yeah, it's that whole with great power comes great responsibility thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for AI, okay, and a big part of that responsibility, I guess, is recognizing that AI isn't some, magic bullet.
Right.
It's a tool. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But like any tool, it can be used for good or bad, depending on,
Mm-hmm.
who's using it and how aware they are.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm really starting to get the bigger picture here. It's not enough to just make AI explain itself. We need to make ourselves more critical thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be aware of our own biases.
Right.
And we need to, approach AI with a healthy dose of skepticism, questioning its outputs rather than just accepting them as, the gospel truth.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay. So that brings us to another really important question and maybe an even more thought-provoking one.
Okay.
If AI can so easily, influence how we understand the world,
Mm-hmm.
who gets to decide what that AI learns in the first place?
That's a big one.
Yeah, because whoever controls the data that feeds these AI systems essentially controls, the knowledge it produces, which then, influences our decisions and actions.
You're exactly right.
So it's not just about the algorithms, it's about the data itself.
Exactly.
Like who decides what information is important, what patterns are worth, identifying,
Mm-hmm.
and what values are kind of baked into the AI's decision-making process.
It's a really important point.
So we're talking about bias, not just in, the algorithms, but in the data itself.
Yeah.
And how that bias can then be amplified through, the AI's outputs and explanations.
Yeah, exactly.
And that raises, like, a whole bunch of ethical and societal questions,
It
right?
does.
Like, who gets to decide what data is used to train these systems? How do we make sure the data is representative, unbiased? How do we hold, those in power accountable for the consequences of these AI-driven decisions?
All very important questions.
Yeah. Wow, my brain is officially full. We've gone from, like, robots teaching us about real estate
Mm.
to, like, a full-on deep dive into, the ethics of data, power, and the nature of knowledge itself.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And the more we rely on AI to guide our decisions, the more important it is to understand, the forces that are shaping that AI
Right.
and to think critically about how we can, use it for good
Yeah.
while minimizing the risks.
Absolutely. Okay, so uh, we ended on a pretty big question last time.
Yeah, the whole idea of like who gets to decide what AI learns.
Right,
Got it.
exactly. It's not just about the algorithms themselves. It's also about, like, who's controlling the data
Mm-hmm.
that's feeding those algorithms.
Yeah, it's a huge question. Lots of implications there.
For sure. So where do we go from here? What can we actually do to make sure that AI is used, for good? It can feel kind of overwhelming.
I think, first things first, just stay informed.
Yeah.
The more we all understand about AI, what it can do, what it can't do, the
Yeah.
better equipped we are to make, like, good decisions about it.
Okay, so we need to educate ourselves, not just about, all the cool things AI can do,
Yeah.
but also about the risks and the ethical concerns.
Exactly. We need to be, like, critical consumers of AI,
Okay.
just like we are with any other technology.
Yeah.
Ask questions like, where'd this AI get its training data?
Right.
Who made the algorithms? What biases might be built into it? look under the hood.
I like that. It's like checking the label on your food, but
Exactly.
for algorithms.
Yeah, you need to know the ingredients.
Right,
Right.
right. So is it also about, like, speaking up?
Hmm.
Letting our voices be heard when we have concerns?
Absolutely. We can support organizations that are doing AI ethically,
Mm.
and we can hold those who aren't accountable.
Okay.
Write to your elected officials, get involved in conversations about the impact of AI.
So it's about recognizing that even though we might not be, AI experts,
Right.
we still have power as consumers, as citizens, to
Yes.
kind of influence, where this technology goes.
Mm-hmm. Make our values known.
Yeah,
Advocate for AI that aligns with those values.
absolutely. And we also have another tool, right? Critical thinking.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Like, don't just blindly accept whatever the AI tells you. Actually think about it. Evaluate the information.
It's about bringing that human element into it,
Right.
our ability to reason, empathize, consider the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
AI can be a great tool to help us think better,
Yeah,
but it should never replace our thinking entirely.
totally agree. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up this XAI deep dive?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the future of AI, it's not like set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
We're all shaping it through the choices we make, the actions we take,
Right.
and our willingness to, have these conversations.
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, and we all have a role to play.
So it's not about being afraid of AI. It's about understanding it,
Yeah.
shaping it,
Yeah.
making sure it reflects our values.
Well said.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to come up for air from this deep dive.
Yeah.
Huge thanks to our expert for shedding some light on this complex and really fascinating topic. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, keep those brains buzzing, stay curious, and remember, the future of AI is in our hands. Until next time, Deep Divers.